My name is Olivia. I am 28 years old, and I have been married to my husband, David, for 5 years. David is 30, a quiet man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He is not rich, but he has a good heart. When I am sick, he makes soup and stays by my side. When I am upset, he listens patiently, never shouting, never turning away. People often tell me that I am lucky to have a husband like him. Maybe I am, but for a long time, I couldn't see it. We live in a small apartment in the city. The walls are thin, and the furniture is old. David works in construction. His job is hard, and the pay is low, only $2,500 a month. I work in an office and earn twice as much as he does. That difference started to build something inside me, frustration. I wanted more. A bigger house, a better car, a life that looked like other people's lives. David would smile when I complained and say softly, "We'll have everything one day, Olivia." But I didn't believe him. I loved him, yet I also resented him. I didn't realize then that my anger would soon become my biggest mistake, one that nearly cost me the man who loved me most. Every morning, David wakes up before the sun rises. I can hear him moving quietly in the kitchen, trying not to wake me. Before he leaves, he leans over and kisses my forehead. His hands are rough from work, but his touch is always gentle. Through the window, I watch him walk down the street with his old lunchbox and worn shoes. He looks tired, but there is peace on his face, a peace I never seem to feel. I start my own day later, drinking coffee while scrolling through pictures of people with big houses, fancy vacations, and expensive clothes. I wonder why my life doesn't look like that. At work, I sit in a clean office with air conditioning while David spends his days under the hot sun. Still, when we come home, I'm the one who complains. Every evening, he returns covered in dust and sweat. He smiles and says, "Dinner smells good." I look at his dirty clothes and sigh. I tell him he should find a better job, make more money. He just nods and says softly, "I'll try harder." Sometimes, he brings me daisies from a street vendor, small, simple flowers. I barely thank him. I tell him, "Other men buy diamonds, David." He looks down and says, "Maybe one day." I didn't know then that he was already giving me something priceless, love that asked for nothing in return. One evening, David came home long after dark. His shirt was soaked in sweat, and his hands were covered in small cuts. I stood at the door with my arms crossed. "Where were you?" I shouted. "Do you even care that I've been waiting all night?" He looked at me with tired eyes and said softly, "I was looking for another job." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Another job?" I asked, my voice trembling between surprise and guilt. He nodded. "I want to help more, Olivia. I'll find something. Don't worry." The next morning, he left before sunrise. I woke up to an empty bed and cold coffee on the counter. When he came home that night, his body seemed smaller, his shoulders heavy with fatigue. A few days later, he told me he had found a second job washing dishes at a restaurant. "It's not much," he said, "but it will bring an extra $2,000 a month." I smiled weakly and said, "That's good," but my heart was uneasy. Weeks passed. David's face grew pale, his hands shook, and he rarely ate dinner. At night, I would hear him coughing in his sleep. I told myself it was just exhaustion, but deep down, I knew I was pushing him too hard. Then, one night, everything fell apart. As soon as he stepped into the apartment, David's knees gave way. He collapsed near the door. I screamed his name and rushed to him. His skin was cold, his breathing uneven. "I'm fine," he whispered. "Just a little tired." We rushed to the hospital. The doctor looked serious. "He's not sick," the doctor said. "He's exhausted, physically and emotionally. His body can't take any more." I sat beside David's bed, holding his weak hand. The beeping of the heart monitor echoed in my head. For the first time, I saw what my anger had done. My words, my constant comparisons, my endless demands, they had pushed the kindest man I knew to the edge. Tears fell on his hand as I whispered, "I'm sorry." In that moment, I realized the truth. I had spent years blaming him for not giving me enough, when all he ever gave was everything he had. I sat beside David's hospital bed for hours. The sound of the heart monitor was steady, but his face looked pale and fragile. I held his hand tightly, afraid that if I let go, I might lose him forever. When he opened his eyes and saw my tears, he smiled weakly and said, "Don't cry, Olivia. I'll be fine." But I couldn't stop. His voice was soft, almost comforting, but it broke me even more. I cried not just out of fear, but out of shame. Every cruel word I had thrown at him echoed in my mind, every time I said he wasn't good enough, every time I compared him to other men. He had worked himself to exhaustion just to give me a better life, while I had destroyed his peace with my anger. The guilt was unbearable. When the doctor finally allowed him to come home, I promised myself I would change. That evening, for the first time in years, I cooked dinner for him. The smell of soup filled the small apartment, and when I brought the bowl to him, he smiled. "You don't have to change everything, Olivia," he said gently. "Just be kind, to yourself and to me." His words felt like a mirror showing me who I had become, a woman blinded by greed and pride. That night, I lay in bed beside him while he slept. I watched the faint rise and fall of his chest and realized how close I had come to losing him. I remembered all the moments I had ignored, the way he always kissed my forehead before leaving for work, the way he brought home daisies instead of roses because they were simple and pure, just like his love. I had been too blind to see the value of what I already had. Tears slid down my face as I whispered into the dark, "I'm sorry, David." My voice cracked, but it was honest. You don't need to be rich to be enough. You've always been enough. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me, not anger, not pride, but gratitude. And as I drifted to sleep, I realized that love isn't about having more. It's about seeing what's already there, before it's gone. Weeks passed, and David began to regain his strength. His hands no longer trembled, and his face slowly returned to its calm, gentle self. The doctor told him to rest for several months, and I made sure he followed every word. I didn't let him go back to working nights, no matter how many times he tried to argue. Our life became quiet again, simple, almost ordinary, but for the first time, I didn't hate that. I appreciated every moment. Each morning, I made his breakfast before he left for work, and each evening, we sat together, talking about small things. The same apartment that once felt too small now felt like a home. One Sunday morning, I surprised him with breakfast in bed. He laughed softly, looking both amused and touched. "You'll spoil me, Olivia," he said. I smiled and replied, "Maybe it's time I finally do." From that day forward, I stopped comparing him to anyone else. I began to notice all the things I had ignored before, the way he always made sure my coffee was just the way I liked it, the way he reached for my hand when we crossed the street, the way he looked at me like I was his entire world. We didn't have a bigger house, or a nicer car, or more money. But I finally understood that love doesn't live in luxury, it lives in kindness, patience, and small acts of care. David never once reminded me of my mistakes. He didn't have to. His quiet forgiveness said more than any words ever could. When he held my hand and said, "I love you," I finally believed that love, real love, was enough. I learned something I will never forget. Love is not measured by how much money you bring home, but by how much of your heart you give every day. For so long, I believed happiness meant having more money, more things, more status. But now I understand that true happiness is having peace, laughter, and someone who stands beside you when life gets hard. I used to wake up angry, thinking my husband wasn't enough. But now, I wake up grateful, knowing that he always gave me everything that truly mattered: loyalty, care, and unconditional love. Sometimes we forget to value what we already have because we're too busy chasing what we don't. I was blind to my blessings until I almost lost them. Now, when I look at David, I don't see a man who earns little. I see a man who gives much, a man whose heart is worth more than any gold or diamond. Love built on kindness and patience can survive anything: anger, pride, and even mistakes. And now I know, the richest life is not one filled with money, but one filled with love that stays even when everything else fades. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more touching English stories that help you learn English through story, emotion, and meaningful life lessons.